As many of you have probably heard by now through social media, the Ottawa Senators have themselves involved here in yet another scandal. On a recent road trip to Arizona to play the Coyotes, 7 Senators players were recorded without their consent or knowledge in an Uber cab ride back to the hotel, where they were caught saying some not so favorable things about the coaching staff and the team. We'll discuss what was said and how the Senators should react to this coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, the Ottawa Senators have yet another embarrassing scandal here on their hands. It is becoming increasingly difficult and more difficult all the time to remain a fan of this organization. They just keep finding ways to embarrass themselves and create controversy when it's really not needed, when they're trying to rebuild this team and improve their play on the ice. As I mentioned off the top, on a recent road trip to Arizona to play the Coyotes, there were 7 Senators players taking an Uber cab ride back to their hotel and were recorded without their consent or knowledge, saying some not so favorable things about the team, the penalty kill, coaching staff, etc., which we'll get into a little deeper here in a moment. Ultimately, the Uber cab driver violated their privacy and uploaded this video to social media, through YouTube and Twitter, I believe it was. And this has become quite a story that's growing quite quickly here in a short period of time. You got to keep in mind here that the Ottawa Senators players had just completed a really bad game, a blowout loss to the Arizona Coyotes, where they really lost the game in the first 10 minutes, giving up 3 goals. Anderson got yanked. It was just an absolutely terrible start. They blew the game. Obviously, these players are frustrated with losing. And really, this type of thing happens all the time in sports. If you've been in a sports team on yourself before, you've played, doesn't matter what level, if you played professional, amateur, what level you're at some point when you're away from the coaching staff, especially after a loss, it's very natural and normal to kind of blow off steam and talk some smack about things that you don't like, even if it's your coaches, the coaching staff, the systems, whatever. I mean, I've been a part of this myself in previous teams. Like, it's very, very normal and common behavior for this. Now, there were a few things that were said, though, in the video that I do find a little bit concerning and alarming, which we'll get into here momentarily. So just kind of summarize what happened. As I mentioned, there's 7 Senators players in this video, and there is a link in the description from the Ottawa newspaper who kind of ran this story and really kind of spread this on fire, and you can watch the video for yourself. Sitting in the front seat, you got Chris Wideman, defenseman. In the middle row, you've got Matt Duchene, Thomas Chabot, as well as Chris Tierney. Back row of the vehicle, you've got Alex Formanton, Colin White, and Dylan DeMello as well. So they're kind of all talking about the loss and how the fact that they can't kill penalties, and they really started harping on assistant coach Marty Raymond and how bad of a coach he is, and they don't listen to him. One quote from Matt Duchene said that he hadn't paid attention in 3 weeks, and he doesn't see any point to having team meetings to discuss some of the things like the penalty kill, because they never change anything and they don't really learn anything. The coaching staff's not really teaching them ways to do things different to be more successful. I mean, Chris Wideman is the guy you can hear the clearest and the best because he's sitting in the front seat closest to the camera, and he's made several comments as well about the PK, having really no success and been terrible lately as well. A lot of the other guys chimed in with a few comments about Coach Raymond and whatever, but for the most part, Duchene and Wideman are primarily the 2 guys that you can hear the best and kind of get the most quotes out of here in this video. Now, of course, like I said, keep in mind that these guys had no idea they were being recorded, and this was a private conversation. So as much as the comments are kind of embarrassing, they're certainly going to create things, awkward tension for the Ottawa Senators players and coaching staff. I really don't put a whole lot here on the players. This was a private conversation, blowing off steam after a bad loss. This happens all the time in sports. This is not, something that just happens with Ottawa Senators guys, and they had no idea they were being recorded, so obviously they would have acted differently had they known that they were. At the same time, though, this is a lesson learned that in today's world, with cameras being so easily accessible and all around you all the time, and everybody looking for some gossip and whatnot, that you really need to be careful what you say in public, regardless of who you're with or where you're at. So I'm sure these guys are all going to learn a very valuable lesson here, even though a lot of people will agree that really they're just blowing off steam and venting as a group here. Now, at the same time, it goes to show how little respect a lot of these players have for the coaching staff, which really isn't a big shocker. This coaching staff has not been able to help this team succeed a whole lot, really, since the first season they were put together. Ever since then, a lot of that too was riding on emotion from the Craig Anderson and Clark MacArthur stories. This team bonded together. I don't really think the coaching staff can take a whole lot of credit, in my opinion, for that season's success. Now, last year and this year, they're obviously struggling hardcore. They had some other issues in the room that they had to deal with. The Senators have traded Mike Hoffman. They've traded Erik Karlsson, trying to get the team back together. Everybody likes to harp on the Pierre Dorion quote that we're a team, whatever, because you don't listen to the full interview. Many people like to harp on that, but they really aren't much of a team right now because there's a major disconnect between the players and the coaching staff, and that's been very apparent here for the last number of games. The real big question here is, how do the Senators handle this and how do they move forward? Regardless of what you want to say of who's right or wrong here, that's going to create an incredibly awkward tension between the Senators and their coaching staff. I mean, I think everybody would probably realize that, the coaching staff, when they're in a private conversation, they probably talk similar smack about the players and vent their frustrations, and players the same about the coaches. This is not an uncommon practice. You really don't know exactly what's being said or how they would feel, and the fact that this is now public is, like I said, is going to create some awkward tension, and I really don't know how they move forward here. Do you suspend the players for having a private conversation made public? I don't really know if that's the right thing to do. Do you fire the coaching staff? I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, at this point, the Ottawa coaching staff doesn't really have a ton of respect in that room, and as a fan of this team personally, I don't really think they're doing the greatest job. So I mean, that is certainly a possibility, but then what kind of message are you sending as well to the rest of the team by getting rid of the coaching staff over this? It's just so difficult to figure out what is the best thing to do here. I really don't know. Once this news story kind of started spreading like wildfire through social media last night, we did have a response here from the Ottawa Senators, as well as many other folks here on social media, mainly on Twitter. So I'm going to put some stuff here up on the screen and read through what the Senators had to say. In response to Postmedia's coverage of a privacy breach against its players and coaches, the Senators players involved and Guy Boucher issued the following statement. Now this comes from Coach Guy Boucher. Nothing is more important to us during this rebuild than making sure our players and coaches are fully committed to our plan, our values, and our system of play. We have every confidence in Marty Raymond's coaching, in the effort and determination of our team, and in the sincerity of our players' apology. We are now treating this as a team matter and will be making no further comment to the media. Okay, well, that's kind of a blanket statement. I don't really expect a whole lot else to come from them. The fact that they're accepting the players' apologies and that they're going to handle this internally, and that as a coaching staff, they have confidence in Marty Raymond. Well, I don't expect him to come out and say anything different. Not a big surprise there. Now, there's also a release here from the players. From Thomas Chabot, Dylan DeMello, Matt Duchene, Alex Formanton, Chris Tierney, Chris Weidman, and Colin White. We want to apologize publicly to Marty Raymond, our teammates and coaches, for our comments in Phoenix, Arizona on October 29th. Our private conversation was recorded without knowledge or consent. We're passionate about our team and focusing on growing together. We are grateful for the support of our fans and organization. This is an important learning lesson, and we will do better. Well, I hope they learn from it, because regardless, like I said, of who's right or wrong here and what you think of the situation, you need to watch your mouth when you're in public nowadays, because you just never know who's going to be recording you and using that against you. It happens way too much nowadays. Like, there's cameras everywhere, and it's so easy to record somebody without their knowledge or consent. Not everybody's going to follow the privacy rules if they think they can get some juicy gossip out to the public, especially if they're going to get paid for it and make some money, which I'm sure this Uber driver was certainly hoping to do. There's been many people speaking out on this situation, offering their thoughts and opinions, so I'm going to take some snippets here from Twitter to throw up on the screen here and see what other people are saying as well. The first one comes from the Uber Canada GM responding to the Ottawa Citizen article. So Rob Kazam is his name. He says a video released by the media today of several Uber passengers being filmed without their consent while having a private discussion during a trip in Phoenix. This is a clear violation of our terms of service, and we worked vigorously to investigate the issue. So clearly, it does violate their terms of service. So anybody who's defending the Uber driver, please stop, because he's clearly in the wrong. Even if it is okay to have the camera, I don't think it's okay to share the video. And even if there is some states where it's legal, it's an absolutely scumbag thing to do, in my opinion. Here's a quote from Brad Miller from the Morning Bagger podcast and professional player over in Germany. He's originally from North America, but playing in Europe like so many guys who unfortunately didn't make the NHL. If you're not familiar with the Morning Bagger podcast, I highly recommend it. It's a very entertaining hockey podcast, and you should definitely check it out. He goes on to say here, the Senators organization should be putting out a press release that says the Ottawa Senators will no longer be doing interviews for the Ottawa Citizen. The Uber driver is a scumbag. Everything else will be handled internally. And I can't help but agree with them. If I were the Sens organization, I would certainly take issue with the newspaper who broke it, obviously trying to embarrass their players. And at the same time, they shouldn't be dealing with Uber anymore because that's a direct violation of their players' privacies. Even if they don't like what their players had to say, the fact that their players suffered a privacy breach, still, at the same time, they should be defended for that. Here's a tweet from former NHL defenseman Ryan Whitney. Whitney says, every team in NHL history has had a cab full of guys ripping the coach or general manager. That's a fact. What a complete scumbag move releasing that video. Now, TSN analyst Ray Ferraro, who has had a tremendous NHL career himself, went on to reply to this tweet and add his thoughts. Ray Ferraro says, pretty sure coaches always spoke of us nicely in private too. Obviously, that's a little bit of sarcasm on Ray Ferraro's part. Like I said before, I'm sure at some point, it happens all the time, that the coaches are going to get together and probably rip the players for their frustration and not executing something right or not learning the way they want to or whatever. This is common in sports. This is how things go. It's just unfortunate that this situation became so public. Now, it seems like this organization is just an absolute magnet for controversy. I mean, they just can't seem to find their way out of it. It seems to find them here no matter what they do. They can't seem to do anything right lately. Really the past year or year plus, really, it's been an absolute disaster. They're the laughing stock of the NHL, and as every day goes by, it's getting more and more difficult to be able to support this organization here in any way. So as much as I do agree with what most of the players were saying, I do understand their frustration, and I do see where they're coming from in regards to how things have been going with this team. At the same time here, my biggest concern is a guy like Matt Duchene having such an impressionable young players around him like Thomas Chabot, Alex Formanton, Colin White, and acting like he did, saying he hadn't paid attention in 3 weeks. This guy is supposed to be a leader. This is a guy that they're talking about signing here for a long-term deal to be around for a long time with this organization that they paid a big price to bring in. And this is how he acts off the ice. I mean, it's a little bit, concerning for me for his part in this. At the same time, I do understand his frustration, but at the same time, like I said, you got to watch what you say, even if you're not thinking about it being recorded. The impression he's making on these younger guys to not give a shit and not care, it's really, that's the part that concerns me here the most. Matt Duchene does not come across as a guy who has any kind of leadership skills at all for this hockey club. So as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. What do you think of the situation? And really, how do the Senators handle this? How do they move forward? It's just, there's no clear solution here. I don't know what is going to be taking place. They have a game this evening against the New Jersey Devils, so they don't really have a whole lot of time to kind of decide what they need to do. They need to come together as a team, and I'm just not really sure at this point that they're capable of it. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.